The fluorescent lights of Seoul Memorial Hospital's emergency room buzzed with their usual 2:47 a.m. indifference when Sarah Chen's relatively peaceful night shift exploded into chaos. The double doors didn't just open, they practically flew off their hinges as a gurney crashed through, pushed by two men in expensive suits who were screaming in Korean. Sarah's coffee cup hit the floor, forgotten, as her brain shifted into clinical assessment mode. Male. Early 30s. Designer suit soaked in blood. 17, she counted quickly, 17 knife wounds across his torso. Her eyes caught on an absurd detail, a small dart protruding from his left buttock, the kind you'd find in a bar game, not a crime scene. But the strangest part? His hands. Even unconscious, possibly dying, this man maintained a death grip on a plastic container of homemade kimchi, the red pepper flakes visible through the cracked lid. "We need a trauma surgeon, stat." Sarah shouted, her hands already moving, checking vitals, assessing damage. The smell hit her, gochujang, that fermented Korean pepper paste, mixed incongruously with what had to be $1,000 cologne. Blood and luxury, violence and kimchi. What kind of man was this? For more men burst through the doors, and Sarah's surreal night took another turn. They weren't wearing suits. They were wearing matching white aprons, like they'd just abandoned a cooking class to rush to the hospital. "Boss. Boss, please." The stockiest one, round face, kind eyes streaming tears, fell to his knees. "We haven't finished the new laundry schedule. You promised to teach us the spring menu." "Laundry schedule? Spring menu?" Sarah's brain stuttered. She'd moved to Seoul 6 months ago to escape her ridiculous life in Toronto, specifically to escape Marcus, her ex-boyfriend who collected toenail clippings for art installations. She'd thought Korea would be normal. Professional. A place where she could fix bodies without the drama. Clearly, the universe was laughing at her. "Clear the way," she commanded, but her hands never stopped working. This man, this boss, covered in stab wounds and clutching kimchi like it was a lifeline, was crashing. His eyes fluttered open. For just a moment, Sarah found herself caught in their depth. Dark, intense, focused despite the pain. He looked directly at her, and his cracked lips moved. "Yobo," he whispered. "Honey." The Korean term of endearment for a wife. "Sir, I'm your doctor." "Wife." His hand, still gripping the kimchi, twitched toward her. Then the heart monitor screamed its flat, terrible note. "He's coding." Sarah yelled, her hands already positioned for compressions. But as she pressed down on his chest, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. The kimchi container in his death grip was leaking. But the liquid pooling on the white sheets wasn't just red pepper brine. It was blood. Not his blood. Someone else's blood, sealed in a container of homemade kimchi, carried through a gang war or whatever fresh hell this was, protected even as 17 knives had found their mark. Sarah pressed harder on his chest, feeling his ribs flex under her palms, counting compressions, watching the monitor. The men in aprons were sobbing. Someone was praying in Korean. The fluorescent lights buzzed. And this stranger, this boss, who called her wife, balanced on the knife's edge between life and death. The monitor stayed flat. Before I tell you whether he survives, hit that like button and tell me in the comments where are you watching from. Because what happens next will make you question everything you think you know about Korean mafia bosses. Trust me, the kimchi is just the beginning. Sarah's hands moved with practiced precision, her fingers finding the rhythm of life-saving that 6 years of emergency medicine had burned into her muscle memory. Compress. Release. Compress. Release. She'd lost count of how many times she'd fought death in this sterile battleground, but something about this man felt different. Maybe it was the kimchi. Definitely the kimchi. Charging to 200, the nurse called out. Sarah stepped back as the defibrillator paddles contacted the man's chest. His body arced. The monitor blipped, stuttered, then found a rhythm. Weak, but there. "We've got him," Sarah breathed. "Prep or two?" Let's move. As the trauma team wheeled him away, Sarah turned to face the 4 men in white aprons who were now clutching each other and crying like they'd just witnessed a miracle. Which, technically, they had. The stocky one, she'd learned his name was Dae-young, approached with a small notebook, tears still streaming down his round, kind face. Doctor, will boss survive? The next few hours are critical, Sarah said, slipping into her professional voice. He's lost significant blood. The wounds, there are 17 of them, missed major arteries by millimeters. If he makes it through surgery. She paused, watching this grown man pull out a pen and actually start taking notes. Are you writing this down? Boss always says documentation is important, Dae-young sniffled, his pen moving frantically. Also, I need to update the prayer chain and the laundry rotation schedule. Sarah blinked. What? But Dae-young was already talking, words tumbling out between sobs. Boss never wanted this life, you understand? His older brother, he was supposed to inherit the family business. But there was this accident with a watermelon truck and a very aggressive goose. Nobody really understands how it happened, the physics don't make sense, but Hyung died, and Min-jae. Boss, he inherited everything. What business? Sarah asked, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know. The Park family has interests, Dae-young said carefully. Laundromats, mostly. 47 locations across Seoul. Best fabric softener in the city. Boss also started a food delivery service, all legitimate, mind you. He wanted to open a restaurant serving his grandmother's recipes. His voice cracked. He just wanted to cook. Sarah's exhaustion was making this conversation feel like a fever dream. So your boss, who was just brought in with 17 stab wounds, runs laundromats. And a very successful kimchi fermentation business, another apron-wearing man added helpfully. This couldn't be real. Sarah had moved to Seoul to escape the absurdity of Toronto, where her ex-boyfriend Marcus had seriously presented her with a framed collection of his toenail clippings as a 6-month anniversary gift. They're organic sculptures, he'd insisted, his hipster glasses reflecting her horrified expression. Each one tells a story of our journey together. That night, Sarah had applied to every hospital in Seoul. She'd wanted simplicity. She'd wanted to fix broken bones and damaged organs without the complications of art installations made from human keratin. She definitely hadn't signed up for a mafia boss who clutched kimchi containers while dying. Dr. Chen? A nurse poked her head out from the OR. We need you in surgery. Sarah scrubbed in, her mind still spinning. Through the observation window, she could see the man, Min-jae Park, laid out under the bright surgical lights. Someone had finally pried the kimchi container from his hands. It sat on a side table, evidence of something Sarah couldn't begin to understand. For the next 6 hours, Sarah worked. She sutured wounds, repaired damage, and marveled at the sheer luck that had kept this man alive. The knives had missed his heart by centimeters. His liver by millimeters. It was almost like someone had been very carefully trying to kill him, but not quite succeeding. In the waiting room, she could see through the small window, Dae-young and his companions had been joined by more men in white aprons. 40 of them now, she counted. 40 men in matching aprons, some praying, some crying, one apparently teaching the others a recipe for something involving radishes. When Sarah finally emerged at 9 a.m., exhausted and covered in another man's blood, Dae-young jumped to his feet. He'll live, Sarah said. The collective exhale could have powered a wind turbine. But he's comatose. We won't know the extent of the damage until he wakes up. If he wakes up. When, Dae-young corrected firmly, his notebook ready. Boss is strong. He once carried 3 industrial washing machines up 4 flights of stairs because the delivery men were on strike and he didn't want to disappoint the customer. Sarah stared at him. In the corner, she noticed an elderly woman had arrived, traditional hanbok, silver hair in an immaculate bun, the kind of face that had seen everything and judged most of it wanting. That's Grandmother Park, Dae-young whispered. She doesn't know about the family business. She thinks boss runs a restaurant consulting firm. The old woman approached, her eyes sharp despite her age. "You saved my grandson's life," she said in perfect English. "I did my job," Sarah replied. "No." The grandmother's hand, weathered but strong, gripped Sarah's. "You did more than that. I can see it in your eyes. You fought for him." Sarah wanted to deny it, but something in the old woman's gaze made lying impossible. She had fought for him. For this stranger who'd called her wife with his dying breath, who smelled like gochujang and cologne, who clutched kimchi like a talisman. "He'll live," Sarah repeated. "But when he wakes up, nothing will ever be the same." She didn't know how right she was. 36 hours after surgery, Min-jae Park's eyes opened. Sarah was checking his vitals, adjusting the four-drip with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd done this 10,000 times, when she felt his gaze on her. She turned, expecting the usual post-coma confusion, the standard, "Where am I?" followed by the gradual return of memory. What she got instead was a smile. Soft, genuine, and completely adoring. "Yobo," he said, his voice rough from intubation but unmistakably warm. "You changed your hair." Sarah froze, her hand still on the four-bag. "I'm sorry?" "Your hair." His hand, the one not connected to monitoring equipment, reached up weakly, as if to touch the ponytail she'd thrown up that morning. "It's shorter? Or did you just tie it back?" He frowned slightly, adorably confused. "I'm sorry, I can't quite remember." "Mr. Park, I'm Dr. Chen. I performed your surgery." Such a formal joke, he interrupted, his smile widening despite the obvious pain it caused. "Are you still mad about the dish soap incident?" "I said I was sorry for using your fancy shampoo in the kitchen sink." Sarah's brain performed what could only be described as a complete system crash and reboot. "Mr. Park, what's the last thing you remember?" His brow furrowed, genuine concentration crossing his handsome features. Even battered and bruised, Sarah couldn't help noticing he was striking, the kind of face that belonged in cologne advertisements, not stabbing victim case files. "I remember, work. The new laundromat location." Dae-young was worried about the fabric softener supplier. He paused, confusion deepening. And then, nothing. "Why am I in the hospital? Did I have an accident?" Sarah's medical training kicked in. She performed the standard tests: pupil response, memory recall, motor function. Each test confirmed what her gut already knew. Amnesia. Potentially temporary, possibly permanent. And somehow, impossibly, this man was convinced she was his wife. "I need to consult with neurology," Sarah said, backing toward the door. "Just rest, Mr. Park." "Min-jae," he corrected gently. "You always call me Min-jae. Especially when you're worried." Sarah fled. In the hallway, Dae-young was waiting with his ever-present notebook and an expression that screamed, "I need to tell you something complicated." "He thinks I'm his wife," Sarah said flatly. "Yes," Dae-young confirmed. "We heard. Also, we need to talk." 5 minutes later, Sarah found herself in a supply closet because apparently, her life had become a medical drama, listening to Dae-young explain why she needed to lie to her patient. "Boss's heart rate spikes when he's confused or stressed," Dae-young said, showing her the monitoring data on his phone. The neurologist confirmed amnesia. Could be temporary, could be permanent. But right now, you contradicting what he believes is his reality? It could trigger another medical crisis. So you want me to pretend to be his wife? We're prepared to compensate you generously." "This is completely unethical," Sarah interrupted. "I could lose my medical license. This violates about 17 different. Victor Choi's Cobra clan is planning a second attack." Sarah stopped. "What?" Dae-young's usually kind face hardened. "The first attack, the one that put boss here, it wasn't random. Victor Choi runs an underground dry cleaning monopoly. Boss's laundromats are legitimate businesses, but they're cutting into Victor's territory. He's obsessed with eliminating competition." He pulled out his phone, showing Sarah surveillance photos of a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a villain casting call. Victor knows boss survived. He's planning to finish the job. Then call the police. Victor owns half the district police, De-young said quietly. The only thing keeping boss alive right now is the 40 men outside this hospital who would die for him. But if boss is unstable, if he's confused and making poor decisions because his brain is trying to reconcile contradictory realities. He met her eyes. Victor will strike. And boss might not survive. Sarah wanted to refuse. Every fiber of her medical training screamed that this was wrong. But she also remembered Min-jae's smile. The way he'd looked at her like she was the best thing in his world. The gentleness in his voice despite the pain he must be feeling. Just a few days, she heard herself say. Until his memory returns or he's stable enough to handle the truth. Dae-young's relief was palpable. Thank you, Dr. Chen. Or should I say, Mrs. Park? Sarah's first conversation with her fake husband was a masterclass in improvisation and panic. Tell me about our honeymoon, Min-jae asked from his hospital bed, his eyes bright despite the pain medication. I can't quite remember where we went. Jeju Island, Sarah blurted, picking the first Korean destination that came to mind. Really? I thought you wanted to go to Hokkaido. You said the snow would be romantic. Sarah's brain scrambled. We're saving Hokkaido for our anniversary. That's right, Min-jae said, relaxing back into his pillows. His smile was so genuine, so trusting, that Sarah felt guilt twist in her stomach. You always plan ahead. It's one of the things I love about you. Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, containing only a photo, Min-jae's hospital room, taken from outside the building. A crosshair photoshopped over his bed. Below it, a message, he survived once. Not again. VC. Across Seoul, in an underground facility that smelled of chemical solvents and expensive fabric, Victor Choi stared at the news report on his phone. Mafia boss survives assassination attempt. His office was a study in obsessive organization. Color-coded files. Alphabetized revenge plans. A spreadsheet tracking every laundromat location in Seoul, with Min-jae Park's businesses highlighted in red. 47 locations, Victor murmured, his elegant fingers drumming on the desk. 47 laundromats stealing my customers with their superior fabric softener and friendly service. His voice dripped with disdain. Park thinks he can disrupt the dry cleaning industry with kindness and good business practices. Pathetic. His assistant, a nervous man named Han, cleared his throat. Sir, the hospital security is extensive. Another direct attack might. I don't do direct anymore, Victor interrupted, pulling up a detailed floor plan of Seoul Memorial Hospital on his computer. Park survived 17 knives because I was merciful. I wanted him to suffer. But mercy is weakness. He clicked through the plans, each one more elaborate than the last, each color-coded by method and probability of success. This time, I'll be thorough. And I'll destroy everything he loves in the process. He pulled up a photo of Sarah Chen entering the hospital. Starting with his wife. In her tiny apartment that night, the one she'd barely spent time in since arriving in Seoul, Sarah stared at the ceiling and wondered how her life had become this absurd. 48 hours ago, her biggest problem was deciding whether to get the bulgogi or bibimbap from the hospital cafeteria. Now she was fake married to a mafia boss who ran laundromats, being threatened by a psychotic dry-cleaning magnate, and somewhere in the chaos, she was starting to find Min-jae's gentle smile and the way he apologized to his forestand oddly endearing. Just a few days, she told herself. Until his memory returns. Her phone buzzed. Another message, this time from Dae-young. Boss is asking when you're coming home. What should I tell him? Sarah closed her eyes. She'd agreed to lie about being his wife. But she hadn't considered that this lie would have a home address. Tell him I'll be there soon, she typed back. After all, what was the worst that could happen? Sarah's apartment caught fire at 3 a.m. Not a big fire. Victor Choi was too elegant for anything as crude as total destruction. Just enough to make the building uninhabitable, to force Sarah's hand, to move her exactly where the charade required her to be. You'll stay with boss, of course, Dae-young said, as firefighters assured Sarah that all her possessions, which weren't many, had survived. At the penthouse. Of course, Sarah echoed weakly, watching smoke curl from her third-floor window. Min-jae's penthouse was not what Sarah expected. Half of it screamed luxury, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul, designer furniture, artwork that probably cost more than her medical school loans. The other half looked like a culinary school had exploded. Professional-grade kitchen equipment, shelves of cooking implements, a kimchi refrigerator that could have housed a small family, and recipe books in Korean, English, Japanese, and French. Welcome home, Yobo, Min-jae said from the kitchen, where he was, despite being released from the hospital only hours ago and against all medical advice, cooking dinner. You should be resting, Sarah protested. Cooking is resting, he replied, his hands moving with practiced grace as he julienned vegetables. Besides, I missed cooking for you. Hospital food is terrible. Sarah watched him work, noting the way he moved despite his injuries, careful but determined. He'd changed from the hospital gown into comfortable clothes, and she could see the edges of bandages under his shirt. Tell me about how we met, he said suddenly. I keep trying to remember, but it's fuzzy. Sarah's mind raced. Dae-young had given her a notebook, of course he had, filled with their history. But she'd barely had time to read it. We met at a laundromat, she improvised. Our laundromat? Min-jae's face lit up. Which location? The first one. The original. Sarah was making this up as she went, but Min-jae's expression suggested she'd hit something close to truth. I was having trouble with the machines, and you helped me. And I asked you out right then? No, you were too shy, Sarah said, warming to the story despite herself. You just kept showing up whenever I did laundry. Eventually, I asked you out. Min-jae laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. That sounds like me. I'm terrible at making first moves. He paused, his expression growing soft. I'm glad you were braver than I was. Guilt twisted in Sarah's stomach, but before she could respond, something small and scruffy trotted into the kitchen. Is that? Sarah stared at the dog, medium-sized, mixed breed, wearing what appeared to be a small bandana. Dr. Sarah Jr., Min-jae said proudly. Found her outside the hospital. Someone tried to poison her, can you believe it? But she's tougher than she looks. The dog, who'd apparently survived Victor's poisoned food delivery meant for Min-jae, sat at Sarah's feet and looked up with adoring eyes. You named her after me? Of course. She's a survivor, just like you. Min-jae turned back to his cooking. Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. Why don't you shower? Your clothes are in the closet. Sarah fled to the bathroom, where she discovered that her closet contained an entire wardrobe in exactly her size. She didn't want to know how Dae-young had managed that in less than 12 hours. Dinner was kimchi jjigae, kimchi stew, and it was the best thing Sarah had ever tasted. You learned this from your grandmother, she asked, remembering that detail from Dae-young's briefing. Everything I know about cooking, I learned from Halmiani, Min-jae confirmed. She wanted me to open a restaurant. Instead, He frowned, confusion crossing his face. I do something else. Business? You run laundromats, Sarah supplied carefully. Very successful ones. Right. Laundromats. He said it like he was trying to convince himself. And we met at one. The original location, Sarah confirmed. They ate in comfortable silence, broken only by Dr. Sarah Jr. begging for scraps. Sarah found herself relaxing despite the absurdity of the situation. Min-jae was easy to be around, gentle, attentive, genuinely interested in her opinions about everything from the food to the news playing on the television. Tell me about your day, he said, as if this were a normal marriage, a normal dinner, a normal life. So Sarah told him about the hospital, carefully editing out any references to him being her patient. She told him about the difficult surgery she'd performed, the interns she'd mentored, the administrative headaches that came with working in a Korean hospital as a foreigner. Min-jae listened with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions, remembering details. When she mentioned her frustration with the hospital's bureaucracy, he said, "You should open your own clinic. You'd be brilliant at it." "Maybe someday," Sarah said, and was surprised to realize she meant it. The first hiding incident happened during a follow-up appointment at the hospital. Sarah had insisted on monitoring Min-jae's recovery personally, easier to maintain the charade if she controlled the medical narrative. They were in an examination room when Dae-young burst in, phone pressed to his ear. "Victor's men in the building. Hospital security sweep in 2 minutes." Sarah's brain went into overdrive. "Come with me. Now." She dragged Min-jae through the hospital corridors, Dr. Sarah Jr. trotting faithfully behind them, until they reached the cafeteria kitchen. The massive kimchi barrel in the corner was her only option. "You want me to hide in fermented vegetables?" Min-jae asked, looking at her like she'd lost her mind. "Unless you want Victor's men to find you, yes." To his credit, Min-jae climbed into the barrel without further complaint. Sarah replaced the lid just as hospital security, definitely not actually hospital security, entered the cafeteria. She stood in front of the barrel, arms crossed, every inch the intimidating doctor. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" "We're looking for a patient," the lead man said. "Min-jae Park." "Haven't seen him." "Now get out of my cafeteria before I call actual security." They left, but not before one of them shot the kimchi barrel a suspicious look. When Sarah finally let Min-jae out, he was soaked in brine and laughing. "This is the strangest medical treatment I've ever received, Dr. Chin." "Your wife," Sarah corrected automatically, then froze. "I mean." "I know," Min-jae said gently, kimchi juice dripping from his hair. "You're both. My wife and my doctor. I'm a lucky man." The way he looked at her, genuine affection mixed with trust, made Sarah's chest tight. The hiding incidents became increasingly absurd. The morgue drawer incident involved Min-jae having to share space with a very understanding corpse. "At least he's quiet," Min-jae had quipped. The children's hospital mascot costume incident resulted in 15 traumatized kids and one very confused staff member who couldn't understand why the bunny mascot kept apologizing for existing. Through it all, Sarah found herself drawn deeper into Min-jae's world. The gang members, all 40 of them, treated her with reverence and affection. They asked her opinion on everything from territorial disputes. She applied medical triage logic. Which areas are hemorrhaging resources? Contain those first, to the menu for their annual hot pot dinner, not poison, became her standard answer. Dae-young's notebook of fake memories became unnecessary. Sarah was creating real ones. Late nights in the penthouse kitchen, Min-jae teaching her to make kimchi properly, his hands guiding hers through the motions. His genuine delight when she finally got the seasoning right. The way he thanked every nurse by name, remembered their children's ages, apologized to his stand for being a difficult patient. The heated debate about pineapple on Korean fried chicken that lasted 2 hours and ended with both of them laughing so hard they couldn't breathe. The almost kiss interrupted by Dae-young bursting in about a territory dispute, leaving Sarah and Min-jae frozen centimeters apart, the air between them electric. And then Marcus showed up. Sarah's ex-boyfriend appeared at the laundromat with a 70-slide PowerPoint presentation about his personal growth journey, and how he'd worked through his attachment issues. The gang, convinced he was an assassin because what kind of person brings a PowerPoint to a laundromat, tied him up in the back room and made him sample 17 different fabric softener varieties while Dae-young took detailed notes on his reactions. "This is kidnapping," Marcus protested weakly. "This is customer research," Dae-young corrected. Now, ocean breeze or mountain fresh? But the most unsettling development was Min-jae's fragmentary memory returns. He'd suddenly remember he was a boss, that he ran an organization, that there were people who wanted him dead. But he still didn't remember that Sarah wasn't his wife. "We need to eliminate the competition at the Harbor District," he'd say casually, then turn to Sarah. "Also, Do you prefer blue or green towels for the guest bathroom? The cognitive dissonance was dizzying. And somewhere in the chaos of fake marriage, real danger, absurd hiding places, and kimchi making lessons, Sarah realized she was falling for him. For this gentleman who apologized to inanimate objects, who color-coded his entirely legitimate business expenses, who looked at her like she was his entire world. The lie had become more real than any truth Sarah had ever known. And that terrified her more than any threat from Victor Choi. Min Jae insisted on date night like they weren't being hunted by a psychotic dry-cleaning magnate. We need normalcy, he said, adjusting his shirt collar with the careful movements of someone still healing from 17 stab wounds. Besides, I want to take my wife somewhere special. Sarah's guilt, now a constant companion, twisted sharper. Min Jae, it's not safe. Dae-young has arranged everything. Private Noribang, full security. His smile was so genuine, so hopeful. Please. I want to sing for you. How could she refuse that face? The Noribang was tucked in Hongdae, all neon lights and velvet couches. Dae-young had indeed arranged security. Sarah counted at least 15 men in white aprons strategically positioned around the building, trying and failing to look casual. Inside their private room, Min Jae scrolled through the song selection with the intensity of someone choosing state secrets. You always loved this one, he said, selecting a ballad Sarah had never heard. She settled onto the couch, Dr. Sarah Jr. curling beside her, and watched Min Jae take the microphone. When he started singing, Sarah forgot to breathe. His voice was beautiful, rich and emotional, pouring feeling into every note. He sang looking directly at her, and Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. This was real. Whatever else was fake, this moment, this feeling, was devastatingly real. Which made the gunfire even more jarring. The door exploded inward. Men in black suits poured through, weapons drawn. Sarah's medical training screamed at her to get down, but Min Jae kept singing. Are you insane? Sarah shouted over the chaos. I'm at the emotional climax. Min Jae shouted back, clutching the microphone like a lifeline. You can't interrupt the emotional climax. A bullet shattered the disco ball. Sarah tackled Min Jae behind the speakers, Dr. Sarah Jr. barking furiously. Around them, men in white aprons fought Victor's forces with whatever was available. Microphone stands became quarterstaffs, tambourines became surprisingly effective projectiles. And then Victor Choi himself appeared in the doorway. He was exactly as the photo suggested, elegant, cold, and completely unhinged. His expensive suit didn't have a wrinkle despite the violence. His smile was all predator. Min Jae Park, Victor said, his voice cultured and terrifying. You survived. How inconvenient. Victor. Min Jae's voice had changed harder, more dangerous. Sarah felt him shift, putting himself between her and Victor. This is between us. Leave her out of it. But she's so integral to everything. Victor's laugh was knife-sharp. Do you know what your little laundromat empire has done? My dry cleaning business, built over 20 years, destroyed by your superior fabric softener and friendly customer service. He spat the words like curses. You're disrupting the entire underground cleaning industry with legitimate business practices. It's disgusting. Sarah's brain stuttered. This was about fabric softener? Competition is healthy, Min Jae replied calmly, though his hand found Sarah's behind the speaker, squeezing tight. Competition is war. Victor pulled a gun, aiming it at Min Jae's head. Sarah didn't think. She grabbed the hospital bedpan she'd been carrying, a quirk that had started as paranoia and become habit, and lunged. Step away from my husband, she snarled, wielding the bedpan like a weapon. Victor actually stepped back. Your wife is fierce. You have no idea, Min Jae breathed, sounding awed. The moment broke. Victor's men retreated, their boss's curiosity about the wife apparently outweighing his murder plans. For now. Grand opening in 3 days, Victor called back. I'll be there. With revelations that will destroy everything you love. Then they were gone, leaving only shattered glass and scattered tambourines. Sarah's hands were shaking. Adrenaline, fear, and something else, something fierce and protective that terrified her. "You threatened a crime boss with a bedpan," Min-jae said, his voice strange. "He was going to shoot you. You could have been killed. So could you." Sarah rounded on him, all her fear converting to anger. What kind of idiot keeps singing during a gunfight? The kind who wants his wife to hear the whole song. Min-jae shouted back. They stared at each other, breathing hard, and then Min-jae pulled her close. "I don't remember our first kiss," he said softly, his forehead touching hers. "But I know this feels right." Sarah knew she should pull away. Should stop this before it went further. Should confess everything. Instead, she kissed him. It was desperate and perfect, adrenaline and emotion crashing together. Min-jae's hands were gentle even as his kiss was fierce, and Sarah forgot every reason this was wrong. Forgot the lie, forgot the danger, forgot everything except how right this felt. Until reality crashed back. She pulled away, horrified. "This isn't real." "What?" "I need air." Sarah fled, Dr. Sarah Jr. at her heels, leaving Min-jae standing alone in the destroyed Noribang. Outside, Dae-young was coordinating cleanup, his notebook somehow still pristine despite the chaos. "The amnesia," Sarah said without preamble. "How long until his memory returns?" Dae-young's face did something complicated. The neurologist said, "It might be permanent." The trauma, combined with psychological factors, boss might never fully remember. The ground tilted under Sarah's feet. Permanent. She might be lying to Min-jae forever. "I need to tell him the truth." Wait, but Sarah was already walking back inside. She found Min-jae sitting on the couch, head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. "I remembered something," he said. "My brother. The accident." His voice cracked. "It was my fault. I was supposed to meet him that day, but I was at Halmini's learning a new recipe. He took my route. The watermelon truck, the goose, it should have been me." Sarah sat beside him, her confession dying on her lips as Min-jae broke down. "I never wanted this life," he continued through tears. "The organization, the territory, the violence. I just wanted to cook. To make people happy with food. To open Halmini's restaurant like I promised." He looked at Sarah, devastated and vulnerable. "The only good thing about this life is you." Sarah's heart shattered. Every word was genuine. Every emotion real. And all of it built on her lie. She opened her mouth to confess, but couldn't find the words. How do you tell someone that the one good thing they believe they have is fiction? Across Seoul, Victor Choi sat in his underground office, surrounded by screens showing Sarah's hospital records, her medical license, her Toronto apartment listings, her ex-boyfriend's Instagram, still posting toenail art, apparently. "Not his wife," Victor murmured, piecing together the timeline. Dr. Sarah Chen, emergency medicine, arrived in Seoul 6 months ago. First documented contact with Min-jae Park, the night of the attack. She saved his life, and they've been playing house ever since. He pulled up the invitation to the laundromat grand opening, a massive event, media coverage guaranteed, hundreds of attendees expected. "Perfect," Victor said, beginning to type a press release. "I'll expose the lie publicly. Destroy his credibility with his organization. Show everyone that the great Min-jae Park's empire is built on deception, just like his marriage." He color-coded the plan, red for humiliation, black for destruction, gold for his ultimate victory. In 3 days, everything would burn. That night, Sarah lay awake in the penthouse guest room. She'd moved there after the kiss, unable to share Min-jae's bed, staring at the ceiling. Min-jae's words echoed, "The only good thing about this life is you." And Victor's threat, "Revelations that will destroy everything you love." She had 3 days to decide, confess the truth and break Min-jae's heart herself, or let Victor do it publicly, with maximum destruction. Either way, she was going to lose him. Dr. Sarah Jr. whined softly, pressing her scruffy head against Sarah's hand. Even you're more honest than I am, Sarah whispered to the dog. Outside her door, she heard Min-jae's footsteps pause, then continue to his room. 3 days until the grand opening. 3 days until everything fell apart. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to imagine a scenario where this ended without devastation. Her imagination failed her. Min-jae's memories were returning like a jigsaw puzzle assembled by a caffeinated toddler, pieces everywhere, nothing quite fitting right. He remembered the organization. The laundromats, all 47 locations, occupancy rates, quarterly earnings. His brother's funeral. The decision to go legitimate. Victor Choi's increasing hostility. But his wedding to Sarah? That remained frustratingly blank. Tell me about our wedding day, he said over breakfast, 2 days before the grand opening. His tone was casual, but Sarah saw the test in his eyes. Every detail. Sarah's coffee cup trembled. She'd prepared for this, rehearsed with Dae-young's notebook. But improvisation and memory were different beasts. It was small, she began. Intimate. Just close family and friends. Where? The original laundromat. True to the story they'd built, at least. What did you wear? A simple white dress. Sarah could see the details forming in her mind, a dangerous thing, building memories of events that never happened. And I wore a suit. Black. With a white apron over it, because you insisted. Min-jae smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. What song did we dance to? Sarah's mind went blank. This wasn't in the notebook. The same one you sang at the Noribang. The ballad. Really? Min-jae's voice was soft, dangerous. Because that song came out 3 months ago. We've supposedly been married for 2 years. The world stopped. Min-jae. I'm not stupid, Sarah. He stood, his movements controlled but radiating pain. I know something's wrong. I just wanted to hear you say it. I can explain. Dae-young burst through the door, phone pressed to ear, face pale. Victor's men spotted near Halmiani's house. Multiple vehicles. Min-jae's expression shifted instantly, from hurt to tactical. Get her to the safe house. Now. I'm coming with you, Sarah said. Absolutely not. She's your grandmother, but she's also an innocent person in danger because of, Sarah stopped herself before saying, our lie. Because of Victor. I can help. By staying safe. Min-jae's voice rose. By not giving Victor another target. By letting me protect you for once. I don't need protection, I need to. To what? Play doctor? Play wife? The words were cruel, sharpened by fear and suspicion. Maybe you should figure out which role is real first. Sarah felt the hit land. Maybe I'm not the wife you think I am. Then who are you? Min-jae's question hung in the air, weighted with all the things neither of them were saying. Before Sarah could answer, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered, and Victor Choi's cultured voice filled the silence. Dr. Chen. I have something of yours. 2 somethings, actually. The photo came through seconds later, 2 elderly women tied to chairs in what looked like a warehouse. Grandmother Park in her traditional hanbok, looking more annoyed than afraid. And beside her, another woman, shorter permed hair, glasses, features that echoed Sarah's own. Sarah's grandmother. In Seoul. A detail she'd never mentioned to anyone because her grandmother had moved here quietly, without fanfare, just wanting to be closer to her only grandchild. 3 days, Victor continued. Grand opening. Min-jae surrenders publicly, admits his empire is a fraud, or I go from kidnapping to something more permanent. Oh, and Dr. Chen? I know you're not his wife. Imagine my surprise discovering the great Min-jae Park's marriage is as fake as his laundromat empire's criminal reputation. The line went dead. Sarah stared at the photo, her world crumbling. Her grandmother. She'd been so consumed with the lie, with protecting Min. Sarah was sitting in her destroyed apartment, surrounded by smoke-damaged possessions and regrets, when the scruffy dog nosed open the door she'd forgotten to lock. The dog looked at her with those impossibly knowing eyes, then turned and trotted back toward the door. "I can't," Sarah said to a dog who absolutely did not care about her emotional crisis. Dr. Sarah Jr. barked once, insistent, then disappeared down the stairs. Sarah followed. Of course she did. She'd been following improbable things since the moment Min-jae had whispered, "wife," with his dying breath. The dog led her to laundromat number 1, the original location, the one from their fabricated meet-cute story. Through the window, Sarah saw Min-jae alone, folding white laundry with the mechanical precision of someone trying to fold their thoughts into order. He looked up as she entered. They stared at each other for a long moment, and then both started talking at once. "I'm so sorry. I need to tell you. I lied about everything. I know you're not my wife." They stopped. Sarah's heart was hammering. "You know? Figured it out this afternoon." Min-jae set down the towel he'd been folding. The timeline didn't work. The details didn't fit. And Dae-young's guilty face when I asked directly was pretty conclusive. "I'm so sorry." Sarah's voice cracked. I thought, it was temporary. Just until you were stable. But then Victor kept attacking, and your memories were coming back in pieces, and I fell." She stopped herself. "You fell for the lie?" Min-jae's voice was carefully neutral. "I fell for you." Sarah forced herself to meet his eyes. "The real you. The one who apologizes to 4 stands and teaches cooking classes and color codes legitimate business expenses. The one who kept singing during a gunfight because you were at the emotional climax. The one who never wanted this life but built an empire on kindness anyway." Min-jae was quiet for a long moment. "Then, I knew. But I also know this, what I feel for you is the most real thing in my fake empire." Sarah's breath caught. "What?" "The amnesia was partly psychological," Min-jae admitted, moving closer. "The neurologist confirmed it yesterday. My brain didn't want to remember being someone I hated. Being the accidental crime boss. Being the man whose brother died in his place." His voice dropped. "But when I woke up and saw you, and my mind told me you were my wife, that felt true. The only true thing in my entire life." Min-jae. "I don't care that it started as a lie, Sarah. I care about where it goes from here." Before Sarah could respond, the laundromat door crashed open. Dae-young burst in, followed by the entire gang, 40 men in white aprons, all looking grimly determined. "We have intel on Victor's setup," Dae-young announced, spreading blueprints across the folding table. "The grand opening tomorrow is a trap. He's planning public execution, media coverage, total humiliation before the kill." Sarah studied the plans. "So we don't go?" "We have to go," Min-jae corrected. "He has the grandmothers. And if we don't show, he'll know we know, and he'll escalate. So we spring the trap first," Sarah said slowly, her mind shifting into tactical mode, the same way it did in the ER when trauma cases arrived. "We use what you do best. Legitimate business. Kindness. And," she looked around the laundromat, an idea forming. "Really good fabric softener." Min-jae's smile was fierce and proud. "I knew I loved you for a reason." The next hour was controlled chaos. Gang members revealed hidden talents, skills they'd learned from Sarah's impromptu cooking and first aid classes. One knew advanced chemistry, useful for non-lethal deterrence. Another had been a sound engineer, useful for coordinating communications. A third was apparently a champion at tactical board games. Then the unexpected allies arrived. 3 rival gang leaders, the ones whose car wash had been accidentally bombed by Victor's failed attack, showed up with their crews. "Victor's been a problem for everyone," one explained. "Your legitimate business approach actually makes the rest of us look bad." But Victor trying to kill you for it? That's too far. Even Marcus showed up, laptop bag over his shoulder, looking nervous but determined. I'm an architectural photographer, he explained to Sarah's astonishment. I've shot every major building in Seoul, including this laundromat. I know the layouts, the sight lines, the structural weaknesses. You're helping us? Sarah couldn't hide her shock. You're clearly happy, Marcus said simply. Happier than you ever were with me and my toenail art. Plus, these guys make really good fabric softener, and I'm not about to let a psychopath destroy that. Dae-young, emotional as always, immediately started taking notes on Marcus's architectural knowledge. Dae-young's phone buzzed. Video message from an unknown number. He pulled it up, and everyone crowded around. Grandmother Park's face filled the screen, looking utterly unbothered by her kidnapping. Min Jae-ya, she said in Korean, then switched to English for Sarah's benefit. I've been teaching these nice young men proper kimchi fermentation. They're having breakthroughs about their life choices. Several have decided to pursue culinary school. She winked. Handle this situation. And bring your real girlfriend. I like her already. Also, I've always known about the family business. I'm old, not stupid. The video shifted slightly, showing Victor's men in the background, crying while mixing kimchi ingredients, having what appeared to be group therapy. P.S. Grandmother Park added. Your grandmother is delightful, Sarah. We're planning to open a cooking school together after this mess. Now go save the day properly. The video ended. Sarah and Min Jae looked at each other and started laughing, the slightly hysterical laughter of people realizing their grandmothers had more control of the situation than anyone else. After this, Min Jae said, taking Sarah's hands, I'm out. Restaurant. Legitimate life. No more accidents into crime families. Maybe a wife who actually chooses me instead of being manipulated by my loyal but overly creative second-in-command. I already chose you, Sarah said firmly. Now let's go get our grandmothers. Min Jae kissed her, properly, honestly, without lies between them. When they broke apart, Dae-young was crying and taking photos on his phone. For the real wedding album, he sobbed. The final preparation moved with military precision. Sarah converted the laundromat's back office into a mobile medical station. Supplies organized, triage protocols written on the whiteboard, escape routes mapped. Min Jae coordinated with the gang members and rival allies, turning laundromat equipment into defensive tools. Industrial washers became barriers. High-pressure steam hoses became smoke screens. Starch spray bottles became temporary blindness deterrents, non-lethal but effective. Marcus mapped sight lines and structural advantages. The rival gangs coordinated perimeter security. Everyone received matching white aprons, armor and uniform combined. Even Dr. Sarah Jr. got a tiny tactical apron, which she wore with absurd dignity. Remember, Min Jae addressed the assembled group, 60 men in white aprons, one brilliant doctor, one reformed hipster ex-boyfriend, and one very serious dog. We defend. We don't attack. Victor wants violence. We give him the opposite. We give him what he can't understand, kindness backed by really good defensive strategy and superior fabric softener. And if that doesn't work, someone asked. Sarah held up her bedpan. Then I hit him with this until he sees reason. The group cheered. Tomorrow, Victor Choi would try to destroy everything. Tomorrow, they'd show him that empires built on kindness were harder to break than ones built on fear. Tonight, they prepared. And Sarah, standing beside Min Jae in their matching white aprons, surrounded by the most absurd family she'd ever found, felt ready. No matter what happens tomorrow, Min Jae whispered, I want you to know, this, right now, is the happiest I've ever been. We're literally preparing for a battle against a psychotic dry cleaning magnate, Sarah pointed out. I know, Min Jae grinned. Isn't it perfect? Against all logic, Sarah had to agree. It really was. The crowd at Laundromat number 47's grand opening was massive media with cameras, curious Seoul citizens, regular customers, and 3 rival gang families trying to blend in as supportive small business enthusiasts. At exactly noon, Victor Choi arrived in a black limousine, flanked by his Cobra clan. He emerged looking like he'd stepped off a runway, expensive suit, slicked hair, cold smile. Behind him, his men escorted 2 elderly women who looked less like hostages and more like visiting dignitaries. Victor took the microphone set up for the opening ceremony. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice smooth as poison, "we're here to celebrate Min Jae Park's laundromat empire. An empire built on lies." He paused for effect. This man claims to be a legitimate businessman, but he inherited a criminal organization. He's so desperate for normalcy, he even faked a marriage. The crowd murmured. Media cameras swung toward Min Jae. His wife? Victor gestured toward Sarah. Dr. Sarah Chen, an ER doctor who saved his life and then pretended to be his spouse. This mafia boss is so pathetic, he needs fake love to feel human. Victor expected shock, scandal, humiliation. Instead, Sarah stepped forward and took the microphone from his hand. "You're right," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the stunned crowd. "I'm not his wife. Yet." Victor's satisfaction faltered. "Min Jae came to my ER with 17 stab wounds, inflicted by this man's associates," Sarah continued, pointing at Victor. "He had amnesia. He thought I was his wife. And I made a choice, unethical, probably stupid, to let him believe it, because keeping him calm kept him alive." She looked directly at the cameras. "But here's what Victor doesn't understand. What started as a lie became the most real thing in my life. I fell in love with a man who apologizes to inanimate objects, who runs laundromats because he genuinely cares about customer service, who dreams of opening his grandmother's restaurant. A man who chose kindness when he inherited violence." The crowd was silent, captivated. "So yes, I lied. We lied. But what Victor is trying to destroy isn't fake, it's just inconvenient to someone whose empire is built on fear instead of fabric softener." Someone in the crowd laughed. Then another. Victor's face went from pale to red. "Enough." He signaled his men. "Take them all." The Cobra clan moved. And Min Jae's absurd defensive strategy activated. Industrial washing machines, strategically positioned, became barriers. High-pressure steam hoses released perfectly timed clouds, creating confusion. Gang members in white aprons worked in coordinated precision, years of learning Min Jae's organizational systems translating to defensive tactics. The starch spray was particularly effective. Victor's men, blinded by temporary but harmless chemicals, stumbled on floors made slippery with fabric softener. Dae-young faced Victor's lieutenant in the center of the chaos, both wielding laundry poles like staffs. Their fight was almost beautiful, choreographed, respectful, ending when both men simultaneously disarmed each other and nodded in mutual acknowledgement before backing away. Marcus, trying to photograph the chaos, accidentally tripped Victor himself with his tripod. 6 months later, Laundromat Number 1 had been transformed into something magical. White flowers hung from the ceiling, intertwined with naturally pristine white aprons. The industrial washing machines had been decorated with ribbons and fairy lights. Rows of chairs faced an altar set up between the dryers, where Grandmother Park stood in her traditional hanbok, holding a tablet she'd gotten ordained online specifically for this occasion. "Dearly beloved," she began in Korean, then switched to English, "and assorted reformed criminals, we are gathered here to make official what everyone already knew 6 months ago: these 2 idiots are perfect for each other." The crowd laughed. Sarah, in a simple elegant wedding dress with a small white apron sewn onto it as tribute to their absurd beginning, squeezed Min Jae's hand. Dae-young, best man and emotional wreck, was already on his 3rd handkerchief. By the end of the ceremony, he'd go through 17. Dr. Sarah Jr. trotted down the aisle as ring bearer, the rings attached to her collar, looking impossibly proud of her role. The crowd collectively, ed. Marcus sat in the 3rd row, hand in hand with one of the gang members. They'd bonded over proper fabric softener pH balance and accidentally fallen in love. Life was strange like that. The reception was held in the same space, tables set up between the laundromat's machines. Victor Choi arrived carrying a gift basket and his therapy completion certificate, which he showed to anyone who asked, and several people who didn't. 6 months sober from homicidal tendencies, he announced proudly. He was wearing the Employee of the Month badge from Laundromat number 3, his second time winning. During his speech, Victor's voice cracked with emotion. My mother never validated my feelings. She never acknowledged my dry cleaning expertise. Min Jae did both. He saw value in me when I only saw rage. He paused, wiping his eyes. That changed everything. When Grandmother Park's kimchi was served, Victor openly wept into his napkin. Later, he announced he was writing a book, From Cobra to Customer Service, a journey of redemption through fabric softener. I'm shopping it to publishers, he said seriously. Also considering a TED Talk. Sarah's toast was simple but profound. I started our relationship with a lie, she said, looking at Min Jae. I told myself it was for good reasons, medical ethics, patient safety, keeping him alive. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared of real connection, real vulnerability, real love. She raised her glass. Min Jae taught me that truth with love is always better than lies with good intentions. Even when the truth is messy and complicated and involves threatening crime bosses with bedpans. The room erupted in laughter and applause. Min Jae's response was equally heartfelt. I inherited an empire I never wanted, built on fear and violence. Sarah showed me that the strongest empires are built on kindness. That vulnerability isn't weakness. That choosing family, really choosing them, every day is more powerful than any inherited obligation. The first dance was to the same song from the Noribang, the one Min Jae had insisted on finishing despite the gunfire. Remember when you threatened Victor with a bedpan? Min Jae asked, spinning Sarah gently. Remember when you died clutching kimchi? Sarah countered. They looked at each other and said simultaneously, best meet cute ever. The epilogue wrote itself in the months that followed. Park family laundromats expanded to 47 locations across Seoul, all employing former gang members in legitimate businesses. Victor Choi, employee number 3, won his 3rd Customer Service Excellence Award and became the face of their new, Second Chances, hiring initiative. Marcus and Dae-young got engaged, planning a fabric softener-themed wedding that would make design blogs question reality. Dr. Sarah Jr. earned her therapy dog certification and worked at Halmini's Kitchen, Min Jae's restaurant that finally opened, serving Grandmother Park's recipes to packed crowds nightly. Sarah became Min Jae's business partner in both the restaurant and the laundromats, splitting her time between medicine and management. Grandmother Park taught weekly kimchi classes to anyone who needed a second chance: reformed criminals, lost souls, and corporate executives seeking meaning. And Min Jae and Sarah? They were still arguing about pineapple on Korean fried chicken, still navigating marriage with the same chaotic energy that had defined their beginning, still choosing each other every single day. The final shot belonged to Halmini's Kitchen on opening night, the sign lighting up, warm light spilling onto the Seoul street, laughter echoing from inside where family, chosen and blood, gathered around tables, sharing food and stories and second chances. Some empires are built on fear. The best ones are built on fabric softener and love.